Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
Hello, welcome back, everyone. I am your host, Scott Henderson, and my co-host is Dr. J. We are experienced investors with a huge advantage of over 100 years of wisdom and experience that we can draw upon as we invest. We are super excited for the guest that we have today. Jason, who do we have coming on today?
Well, we have a veteran with us, and I'm so grateful, Austin, that you had the willingness and the courage to serve our country in the way you have. Having said that, Austin was born in Mesa, Arizona, yet when he was 2 years old, he moved to Vegas, where he essentially grew up. After serving a mission for his church, he entered the United States Air Force and worked in intelligence for 10 years. After that time, he decided to go to college and was at BYU for several years in pre-med. It was kind of a dream of his to become an orthopedic surgeon. And one night he got talking to his wife. They had 2 children, another one on the way, and it seemed like they never got to see each other, and time really was an issue. And they realized that that path would probably be a very long path before they started to have more time together. Since then, they've had another one, so he's a father of 4. He decided to drop out of college and become an entrepreneur, basically. And he has been very successful. So welcome, Austin. We're so happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about, you have this night with your wife, and she basically says, dude, no more. I need you more. I need more time. You decided to drop out of college, which is gutsy. What did you do after that?
I got desperate. I just started applying anywhere and everywhere I could, knowing I had, responsibility with my family and needing to figure out how to, make more money, make ends meet. I actually became oddly enough, so my wife is a cosmetologist, she's licensed, but since having kids, it's been harder for her to, have time to, do that as well as take care of the little ones. So I actually got my first job right out of college at a beauty school. So here's a veteran. I'm now working with 70 women. Okay. And
that explains the beard and everything. It looks good.
My job was yeah, they helped with that. But my job was the business director. So most of my work was on the back end with business and, going over numbers, making sure that we're working well with the government regulations that go in with student loans, things like that. But I'll tell you, they also came to me as though I was the principal or the mediator, because I was the only man. So I was like the balance to the force of women there. It was, man, I don't know. I definitely would never like to work in that environment again, but I learned so much. And what's funny is I have a wife and 3 daughters, 1 son. So it's like I'm surrounded by women anyway, but it was a good experience for me. It was. And I actually got a call from the owner of that school just about 4 weeks ago. And she said, Austin, since I've had 6 other directors and no one has been able to duplicate the results that you got. And I think it's because you're the only man we've ever hired to be the director of a beauty school, like at least our school. And yeah, so I later left that position and came to Brand Makers, where I was hired as like a sales rep. And it's been great. It's been a really, really good experience here, just kind of being that 1099, eat what you kill kind of mentality. Nothing's guaranteed. You just got to work and make things happen.
Oh, absolutely amazing. Forgive me because Jason's having some Wi-Fi trouble, so hopefully he'll jump back on here in just a second. But so you go to this beauty school, and then what was your path from there?
Well, to tell you the truth, there were two owners at the time, and one of them, as my being business director, my job was to basically make sure the business functioned well. And we would have these staff meetings, and me being in the military, I was briefing generals, commanders. I was working intelligence, so I was talking to very high level people. If you don't know your stuff, it's going to be problematic for you. So I got really used to taking very clear notes and assigning very clear tasks, missions, milestones, that sort of thing. So in these staff meetings, I would do the same, and then I would follow up with people. Well, we had this event planned, and one of the owners called me a few days after the staff meeting, and she says, "Hey, did you reach out to these students and ask them if they're going to come to our event?" And I went and looked at my notes, and that was the task we had assigned her. She had actually assigned it to herself. So I said that to her. I said, "Hey, according to the notes from the meeting, that's actually the assignment you took on. But if you would like me to handle it, I'm happy to do that. I just need to know." She kind of got disgusted and just whatever, and she hung up. And I was like, no, this was an owner. She was from Hollywood, California, different mentality, different way of dealing with things, totally fine. And we would usually have an owners meeting with me, like the two owners would meet just with me. That was, every other week. Staff meeting was every other week. So, staff meeting, our meeting, staff, etc. So a couple days after that, I meet with them, and she just looks upset, like very, you can read the body,
yeah,
right? The facial expressions. When a woman has got something ready to fire, they're ready to send it. You're prepared, and the meeting starts, and she says, "I think the only reason you take notes is to get me in trouble, or to get us in trouble for things we don't do." I said, "No. I do that because I am the director of business. I'm the one that's trying to make sure things function and move forward." And she says, "If I call you and I tell you and ask you about something, I just need you to shut up and do your damn job." That's what she said. And, as somebody who spent 10 years in the military, obviously I am capable of violence, but I don't, right? It takes more honor to learn how to harness and have the capability, but not use it, kind of thing. But those types of things, I don't deal well with that kind of illogical, outlashing. So as soon as she said that, instead of reacting, I just looked down, grabbed my notebook, and started taking notes.
I'm sure she appreciated that.
No, did not. But after that whole exchange, I went back to my office. I wrote up my resignation, put it on the owner's desk, and said, 2 weeks from now, I'm gone. And I didn't tell my wife. At the time we were pregnant with number 3, so it was kind of a ill-advised move, not something I'd recommend to most people. But for me, my honor, my integrity, my self-respect meant more to me than staying in that kind of situation. So what's cool though is I went home. I didn't tell my wife that I'd quit my job, didn't want to worry her. And that night, I fall asleep fairly quickly, surprisingly, but almost right at like midnight, I wake up and something just tells me, "Austin, get downstairs, start sending your resume out right now." So I do that. I go downstairs, hop on the local thing, KSL here, and I just start looking for jobs and just sending out my resume. The next day I get a call from this company, from this man, James. He's with a company called Brand Makers. He says, "Hey, Austin, what were you doing up at 12:30 last night?" And I was, "What?" He said, I sent out, or I put up the ad for a new sales rep for our company at like 12:14, and I got your resume within like 15 minutes. And he said, "You're the only one I got, until probably about 10 o'clock today." And so so I told him the story, and he was like, "Huh, that's interesting." Anyway, we go through this phone interview, and we're coming to the end. And James says to me, he's like, "All right, I got one more question. This is the most important question, so I want you to take it very seriously." He said, "We have a specific culture at Brand Makers, so I need to ask you, are you a douchebag? And I was so caught off guard. I was like, oh my gosh, well, I sure hope not. And he just starts laughing, he's like, no, I don't think you are. But I'm going to tell you, that's my number one rule, because sales guys often get a bad rap. So he's like, my number one rule, don't be a D-bag. So anyway, as soon as that happened, I was like, man, I think I want to work for this man. Like this man seems to just be very authentic, genuine. And when I came to work for them, I was offered the position about a week later. And I will tell you, it has been one of the best experiences of my life working with this company. In fact, I still do. Like I said, I'm a 1099 contractor, so I kind of come and go as I please. And I've been able to maneuver myself or position myself with VAs and support staff that now I don't have to be here 9 to 5. In fact, I probably come and work on brand makers about 15-20% of the time. And I spend my time in other business ventures. So
outstanding. So keep going down the path. I'm interested, which means all our listeners are interested. Like, how did you get from your W-2, you got hired, to 1099 to now other people are doing the work? Because we hear this often. We hear this often, especially from military personnel that will come in and their businesses are just functioning so well and efficiently because that's what you're taught in the military. But to make that transition can often be difficult because you're also used to taking orders.
Yeah. No, it was different. But, it's one of the things that I struggled with in the military. In fact, when I first got enlisted with the military, I was, full bore going at it, right? Trying to be the best in every aspect. Like I graduated from basic training with honors. I got what's called the Warhawk Award, which means you are the top tier for fitness, your testing scores, and the other point systems that they have. And then I got what's called below the zone, where I ranked up 8 months earlier than all of my peers. And then I tested for staff sergeant, which is, E5. I tested for that within, I want to say it was 2 years and 8 months of, being there, where most people don't make staff sergeant until, 5 years plus. I was testing for it in under 3 years. And I got the second highest score from my career field in intelligence. And guess what? They said to me, they're like, hey, you're accepted. You're a staff sergeant select. So you've been selected for staff sergeant, but we're not going to let you put the rank on your sleeve for another 18 months because we need to kind of let other people catch up. And I'm sitting there looking around like, so you're telling me because I busted my ass this entire time and I worked super hard to get every point and do everything I needed to do, I now need to sit here and wait for all these schmucks who don't want to work to catch up? Like, it was the first time where I was just, oh, this is, really frustrating. And it took me years after that, though, to realize I'm not the type to sit and wait or just be told what to do. I'm better being autonomous. So when I got to brand makers, it was not even a normal sales job. They don't provide you leads. They don't give you any current clients to work with. You're literally at ground zero and they say, here's the phone, here's the internet, go find clients. And I'll tell you, this was my MO for the next probably 2 years. I would at night, my wife would turn on a show on Netflix. I'd have my computer and I'd start looking for what I call suspects, right? People I suspect would buy my products. And then I'd make a suspects list with names, phone number, company, name of person probably in charge, and then the phone number. And then the next day I'd come in and I'd call them all. And within just about 3 or 4 months, I had broken the record for the company of most calls made in a month because I was just obsessed. And by I think it was my second full year, I decided I wanted to sell 1 million in 1 year. And we're talking promo items like pens, drinkware, t-shirts. To sell 1 million in that by yourself, it's not that easy. Your average order is sitting between like $700 and $1,200. So to sell 1 million of that is quite a feat. And there were a couple of guys in the company who had already done it, but they had been working here for over a decade. And so they had quite a bit of time under their belt. Anyway, I set that goal. I became absolutely obsessed with it. And I remember this was 2019. I got a message and basically my assistant said, "Hey, we just sold 1.3 million." And it was like the end of the year. And I was like, man, I didn't just hit my $1 million goal. I beat it by like 30%. And it was the first time where I was like, wow, I can actually do crazy things, you know? But what was crazy about it too is in that moment, within about 10, 15 minutes, the high left me. And then I just had this, well, now what? And then I started spiraling a little bit where I was just like, I thought I would feel different. I thought I'd be a different man. I thought, you know, I had all these emotions and things attached to that goal and that number that it was actually kind of anticlimactic. And I turned to my wife, I was in the car and she was actually driving. And I was like, why don't I feel different? Why don't I feel better? And she's like, I don't know. You've been obsessed with this for over a year. You just did it. And now you're telling me you're not happy with it. I was like, no, I'm not saying I'm not happy. I just thought there would be more like substance to it. And it was then that I was like, well, maybe I'll find it somewhere else. And, you know, once I made that money, I was like, well, let's go buy some rentals. Let's, you know, and so then I chased it in that. And, you know, I kind of learned though, that your money is not, we all know money is not happiness. It's a tool, and it's a tool that you can utilize to create opportunities and to create options for more freedom in your life. But ultimately, the happiness resides within you at any time, you know? And it took me a long time to really realize that. And I started going back to my roots of training and things like that. And yeah, I continued with Brand Makers, but I was like, okay, Brand Makers has been my launch pad. It's the thing that set me up to realize, okay, I have a cash cow right here. As long as I maintain what I have right here, I'm going to make about X, you know, X amount every year. And that sustains more than my basic needs. Like, I mean, I make good enough money to where I really wouldn't have to worry about much else, but I'm also not a sleeper. I'm not the type to just sit on a beach drinking lemonade. Like, it's not really who I am. And I finally came to the conclusion of, hey, I need to really discover who I am and my purpose and why I was put on this earth right here, right now. And it led me on a whole new journey for the next 3 years of discovery and really trying to figure out what I want and what I can give or offer other people. And that's kind of how I arrived where I am now.
Wow. That's amazing. That's absolutely incredible. And a lot of people don't realize that the path is not a straight line. It goes from one point to the next, and you learn these little lessons from each that helps create the business that you're in now. You know, from the military, learning how to be able to delegate, learning to be able to be concise and delegate now, I imagine is extremely helpful as you have your VAs, especially people who work in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
It sounds like to me that one of the things you wanted to do was start to have, you know, I think it's from the 4-hour work week, as mailbox money.
Yeah.
Right. And you started down that path and discovering how to go about that. So you have this stability, if you will, with your one gig, and then you started into some other things. What are some other things that you've started into?
Well, like I said, at first I was just trying to figure out, what do I want, you know? And the reason I started getting into rentals, it's kind of it wasn't necessarily the business side of me as much as it was a nostalgia. And I'll explain. So my grandparents owned a bed and breakfast that my grandpa started in 1989. And he started it just outside Bryce Canyon National Park in, you know, southeastern Utah. And I loved going there. Absolutely. Like, it was it was a town of, 500 people. You could explore all day on four-wheelers and just, you could shoot BB guns and just, be a kid and really not have a lot of restrictions or limitations. And so I loved going there. Well, I told my parents when I was 15 years old, I told them, I'm going to own this bed and breakfast someday. And my parents kind of laughed. They were like, okay, whatever, Well, fast forward 19 years and my grandma passes away. And my grandpa is living in a home. And then just 3 months after my grandma passes away, he passes away. They were both 92 or 93 years old, or like right there. And it goes to the family trust, which is basically governed by my uncles, my dad's older brothers. And they tell me they're going to sell it out of the family because no one wants to deal with it. And I said to my wife, I was like, no, this cannot leave the family. This is something that means so much to me. I love that place. I've always loved that place. And so I convinced her, even though at the time we weren't really, even though we had made some money, we weren't in a position to necessarily invest as much as it took. But I convinced her anyway. And I just said, please, please let me do this. And she did. And this was December 30th, 2019. Look what happened just 3 months later. The pandemic hit. Everybody got shut down. Everybody was restricted from travel. And here I'm sitting with this huge investment. It's a 6-bedroom, 7-bath on, almost an acre that I have to cover. And now we can't rent rooms. And it was scary. I was kind of freaking out about it, but I've always been the type to just say, well, what can I do right here in this moment? Because that's all I have control over. So every day I actually, to tell you the truth, I moved down there and I started remodeling because I had nowhere to go, right? We couldn't go to our offices. We couldn't go anywhere. So I moved down there and I spent the next 5.5 months remodeling the entire house inside and out. And then they opened it up and they told everybody, hey, okay, the country's somewhat open, but we recommend you go to outdoor places that with open air, not a lot of crowds. We booked like solid for the next 5 months.
Wow.
And I almost broke even my first year. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, what if I would have just given up and said, you know what, I'm defeated. I made a bad decision. But no, I was like, you know what, there's not much I can do. I'm going to just make this place look as nice as possible. And, worst case scenario, I'll just tell my wife, we're going to sell our house there and we're going to move into this one because it's bigger. That's what I told her. I was like, I don't know what else to do. And, I kind of rolled the dice with it. And guess what? It panned out. It worked out really well. And then, about a year and a half after that, I purchased our second, bed and breakfast. So we were up to renting 11 rooms. And then 5 months after that, I bought 10 cabins. They're they're kind of micro cabins. They're just small 1-bedroom cabins. And then since then, we've bought 2 more houses. So, and we were just renting them all.
I love it. I like your whole mentality of get her done. I don't know whether that's coming from the military or even as a childhood. However, it is similar with a lot of entrepreneurs that those that make it, they find a way, right? I have one of my mentors says, you come across an opportunity, you say yes, and then you find out how to do it. You simply go about it, be over, under, through it, round it, whatever it takes to get it done. I really think that's awesome. Tell us for a minute where Austin's going to be in 5 years. What's your vision?
So I want to be up to 50 doors within 5 years with our rental company. But more importantly, I've started my Warrior Ethos Life program. And this program actually started for me about 3 years ago. I lost my absolute best friend. He took his own life, and it still is the hardest thing for me. And, military, the statistics, people have seen the statistics, we're losing 22 a day, sometimes more. And I myself have struggled with different bouts of depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. I got myself into therapy about a year and some change ago because I was literally sitting right here in this chair in this office. And it wasn't even that my life was bad. My life, I have a extremely blessed life. My wife is gorgeous. My kids are amazing. My businesses are flourishing. And yet for some reason, it just felt as though the darkness was just closing in, closing in, closing in. And like the pressure and the way my mind was just, it just couldn't shut down and it couldn't stop moving. And but I had promised a long time ago that that's something that's just not on the table. Right. And immediately I got online and I just looked up therapists in my area, like just Google it or something. And I don't even know what website I found, but it was like a shopping list of like therapists, where you could read a little bio about them or whatever. So I'm scrolling through and I come across this guy and I'm like, I know this man. But in my mind, I'm like, no, you've never met him. You're really good with faces. Like I said, I'm pretty good about knowing who I know and who I don't. But something in me said, you know him. So I reached out, called, no answer. So I left a voicemail. And then on his little bio said, hey, you can text me. So I sent him a quick text. I said, hey, my name's Austin. I'm a veteran. I have battlefield experience. I struggle at times with X, Y, and Z. Just wondering if I can meet with you. He texted me back, pretty quickly after that. He's like, you know what? I actually have an opening at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Uh-oh.
And immediately in my head, I have two thoughts. Either this is the worst therapist in the world because he has an opening tomorrow, or like this is one of those, tender mercy moments where you're like, all right, thank you. I know you're there. I know you're looking out for me. Right. And obviously I want and believe the latter. I think that was a turning point for me. And it's been really beneficial. I try to tell men, like, stop correlating weakness with reaching out. It's something that's been really, really hard for men. Like, for some reason, we feel the need to suffer in silence as long as we possibly can. Because it does have this connotation of some sort of weakness or not being able to handle your stuff. And anyway, long story short, that's what got me to kind of start this program that I call the Warrior Ethos Life, where I create it's a warrior training to build your heart, mind, body, and business. And I always start with the heart because I realized a long time ago, if my heart's not right, it's really, I'm not going to be able to really manage or take joy in anything else. And there's four main enemies of the heart that I think men deal with, more than any. There's lots of enemies, but there's four main ones that men deal with: guilt, anger, greed, and jealousy. Guilt, anger, greed, and jealousy, those four. And I train people how to recognize them, how to prepare for them, what weapons to use to battle them, and then how to protect or guard the heart once you've won the battle. Because the battles are going to keep coming, right? It doesn't end. And that's okay. It's okay to accept that opposition is what life is. That's how we experience joy. But there is specific training that you can do. And then when I move into the mind of the warrior, I use some of the tactics and tricks that we used in some of my intelligence training, as well as some of the coaches I've worked with, things like neuro-linguistic programming and, other things to really hone in like how you function as a human being and as an entrepreneur or as a warrior in your own life. And, I'll move it into then, you can go into fitness and things like that. And then obviously businesses, I teach people, basics all the way up to here's how you scale and invest to just keep the revenue rolling and eventually have passive income. But I do tell people, I think I hate right now that every guru, it seems, on the internet is like, oh, come to me and I'll give you passive income, come to me and I'll show you how to get passive income. And I'm like, it's not true. Like, the only way to get passive income is if you have a lot of income. And you can use that to then hire out the work. But most people don't have that type of income, especially the ones that are on Facebook, as much as, you know, these people are. I think it's available eventually, but it's something that needs to be matured and grown over time. But, you know, I said in a video the other day, look, when God was speaking to Adam, he said, you will earn your bread by the sweat of your brow. It is no different for you and me. He didn't say, hey, come to me in prayer and I'll give you passive income. He didn't say it, you know? No, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think you need to learn a certain level of sweat equity, right? And then that will be available to you down the road. But learn the principles and the training and the execution first. Then we can transition over time and you could become what I call an elder, right? Where then your job is really just to listen, love, and give advice. But you're in a sense, you've done your lot, right? You're now just in a position to listen, love, and give advice.
So this warrior mentality, are you attempting to help only veterans, or are you open to any
No.
male out there?
Yeah, and I'm not shutting it down for women either, but it is open to everybody. But I would say that the warrior spirit, or at least the idea of a warrior, definitely resonates with men I guess just in greater numbers. But I don't, you know, say, hey, it's just for, you know, this small group. In fact, I think a lot of the training that I do, it benefits people who are not in the military almost more, because they haven't had a lot of this training that I've had. And I mean, yeah, the intelligence world is a little bit different than even your basic soldier and stuff, you know, but it really, it can transition and transform your life in so many ways, So I try to open it up to everyone.
Awesome. So if our listeners wanted to connect with you, how would they go about doing that?
So I'm on pretty much all the social media platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So you can either go Austin LeFevre or at Warrior Ethos Life. And then, yeah, I have a program available, and we're going to be, you know, kicking off a couple of things here in the new year that I'm pretty excited about.
Cool. We'll certainly put in the show notes, everyone, ways that you can get a hold of Austin. Austin, one of the things, have you read the book Extreme Ownership?
Yes, I have.
Jocko. So
Yep.
One of the things there is, you know, it's all about taking responsibility for everything. And it sounds like you're doing that and helping people. Real quick, kind of in summary, I know we've got to get moving along with some of your schedule. What would you say in sort of in imparting to our listeners?
So I would assume that most of the people who listen to your podcast or who are in this space of entrepreneurship, investment, real estate, they're not afraid to hustle. They're not afraid to put in the work. But the thing I would suggest is learn to be really, really good at stillness, at going inside yourself and visualizing. I'm a big believer in meditation, in visualization, and really trying to connect on another level. Because I can sit here and give you all the tactics, all the strategic ideas, all the mission plans to go out and execute. But in the end, if you really can't have an imagination and a visualization of what the purpose of this whole thing is, you're going to get there and it's going to feel like a mirage. You're going to reach out and you're going to grab, and it's just going to be nothing. And that's, I've been there, and it really put me into somewhat of a dark spiral, because I thought it was the oasis I was looking for. I thought that, oh, once I earn this much money, then I'm allowed to be happy. Then I'm allowed to have self-respect. Then I'm allowed to, you know, X, Y, and Z, whatever. And it's not true. That is what I call the mirage of making it. If you put those kinds of palm trees, water, and oasis on your goals and try to say that, oh, I can only have those things, I'm going to punish myself until I get there. Guess what? When you get there, you won't actually feel the joy. So the best thing to do is to learn to go internally, have some stillness, and find out how to have internal peace and joy right here, right now, in this moment. And it'll make your goals so much easier.
I completely concur. Thank you so much, Austin. We have enjoyed the time that we've been able to spend with you. Again, guys, remember, if you want to connect with our guest, we will have all of the links in the show notes down below. If you'd like to connect with us, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or shoot us an email. All the links are, again, in the show notes below. Last, mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Remember to make sure they are the best. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.